The invention of the Protectron by Robco Industries revolutionized the workforce. No longer did blue-collar workers need to risk their lives performing dangerous tasks or slave away at menial labor. Robots could do it for them. Robots do the tough and menial tasks. Humans could do the thinking and decision-making. But what happens when you replace your entire workforce with robots, leaving your former human employees out to dry with nothing? Well, you get the topic of today's video. This is the Poseidon Energy Riots, what I believe to be one of the bloodiest pre-war events in all of Fallout lore. To truly understand how the Poseidon Riots came to be, we must first establish a bit of context. The world as a whole was suffering from dwindling resources. Decades of consumerism, wasteful practices, and refusal to acknowledge the problem had finally caught up with the major superpowers of the world, leading to armed conflicts between countries. Something needed to be done. Change needed to be had. No longer could these major countries rely on non-renewable resources like coal, oil, and natural gas for energy and electricity. An alternative was needed. And where some other parts of the country were busy developing nuclear, solar, wind, and hydroelectric energy as an alternative source, one region actually happened upon a new source of energy, purely by accident. Appalachia is a region of West Virginia whose economy heavily relied on primary industries, mining, farming, forestry, etc. As such, much of their working class fit into the typical description for a blue-collar worker. They were miners, lumberjacks, farmers, fisherfolk, and the likes. And it was within one of the many mines across Appalachia that, thanks to Atomic Mining Services' subatomic blast mining, the first ultracite deposit was discovered. Ultracite was this glass-like ore that, when handled properly, could potentially power industrial-grade machinery for decades. It was noted to be quite similar to uranium. Because of this, AMS believed that this was the future of power in the United States. The company, now equipped with a revolutionary resource, started off small, powering the futuristic, fully automated city of Watoga and selling the stuff to other companies. Hornwright Industrial, Garahan Mining Co., and Poseidon Energy. It's the final company in that list, Poseidon Energy, in which I want to draw your attention to. Poseidon Energy was this massive global energy conglomerate. Any type of energy you can think of, Poseidon had power plants across at least North America dedicated to producing power. Oil refineries, nuclear power plants, solar farms, offshore drilling. They were one of the biggest companies in the Fallout universe. So naturally, it made sense for them to be interested in Atomic Mining Services' newfound resource. With their share of the ultracite, Poseidon Energy opted to retrofit one of their oldest power plants into an ultracite power plant. This decision is the starting point for where it began to go wrong. Poseidon Energy Plant WV06 was built as a coal power plant in the 1970s. As it was situated in Appalachia and coal was on its way to becoming fully depleted, it made sense for it to be converted to an ultracite power plant, out with the old and in with the new. However, it was around this time that many folks across the entire United States began losing their jobs. Robots were being produced that could replace human workers. Notably, many Protectron variants came about to take over once human-dominated fields: police, firefighters, first aid, construction workers, and more. One of the biggest corporate families in Appalachia, the Hornwrights, had developed this cutting-edge Protectron variant, dubbed the Autominer. Proven to be faster, cheaper, and more efficient than a normal human worker, these bots were threatening to eliminate many Appalachian families' only source of income. With homelessness and unemployment rates increasing daily, many people within Appalachia that still had jobs began to worry that they were next. This fear reached a level that even led some folks to intentionally sabotage their current employers as a sign of defiance. The automation riots were upon us. Decades of workers' rights abuse across the United States led to a series of violent and catastrophic events, protests, and demonstrations. A notable amount happened in West Virginia. This was due to the Appalachian government's proposed Appalachian Prosperity Act. At a cost of $2.6 billion, The act was set to replace all human workers in the government with automated systems. If this act were to pass, Appalachia would set a dangerous precedent for the rest of the Commonwealths, and open a pathway for private corporations to replace their human workers as well. The much-needed change in the United States was happening, but it was at the cost of the everyman, like you or me. Because of the ongoing automation riots and news about Plant WV06's switchover from coal to ultracite, many workers wondered if this would be used as an excuse to terminate the human staff. As ultracite was new and extremely volatile, it wouldn't be surprising to see a robotic staff handle the material instead. The employees at the Poseidon plant merely wanted affirmation that their employment was secure, even if it was in a different role or location. However, their request for a new workers' contract that ensured job security fell on deaf ears. Even worse, Poseidon implemented a new company-wide policy that banned any sort of protest during working hours, with the punishment being termination of employment. This obviously angered many of the workers who simply wanted assurance that they would be able to continue feeding their families. They wouldn't be unemployed, they wouldn't become homeless, that their livelihoods would be protected. And so, with the employees united and with the help of the Associated Miners Union, the workers at the Poseidon plant WV06 staged a walkout. Unlike some other anti-automation demonstrations in Appalachia, the protest was intended to be peaceful. This was especially true as plant manager Renee Hargraves and the union representative who was overseeing the protest, Jacob Hargraves, were assumedly married. Renee wasn't going to do anything rash on behalf of Poseidon Energy, and Jacob wasn't going to do anything rash on behalf of the workers. It was just supposed to be a peaceful protest. But against the wishes of both Hargraves, things eventually escalated. Director of Security for the plant, Brent Olson, was about as unsympathetic as one could get. He saw the protesting workers as a national security issue and requested aid from the National Guard. Yeah, it got bad quick. Now, one might wonder why the National Guard would respond to an issue that a private company was having on that private company's property. There was no threat to public property or anything, so why would the National Guard even respond to such a request? Well, the biggest reason is that the federal government and Poseidon Energy were quite chummy with one another. Throughout the Fallout franchise, we discover that the oil rig that the President and Enclave retreated to and set up shop at was owned by Poseidon Energy. The company's terminal network, PoseidoNet, was repurposed for Enclave use, and advanced weapons research performed by Poseidon Energy was used in the Enclave's equipment designs. The pair had been dubiously connected to one another for some time. So when Poseidon calls and asks for reinforcements at a new state-of-the-art and potentially world-altering power plant, the National Guard answers. With the heightened presence of soldiers, APCs, and tanks, one might think that it would be enough to shut down a protest. Intimidate the protesters with all this firepower in hopes that they would pack up and go home. Well, it didn't work. Olson's escalation of what was a peaceful demonstration forced Renee to terminate his employment on the grounds of insubordination. But Olson's power trip wasn't quite done yet. As Director of Security, Olson initiated a Class 3 lockdown of the plant. Company policy stated that this would put Olson in charge of the plant until it was deemed safe once again. Olson had his security force lock Renee in her office, citing that it would be too dangerous for her to leave while the plant was on a lockdown. Now in full control of the plant, Olson could deal with the protesters as he saw fit, separate from the empathetic plant manager. With the protesters unwavered by the presence of National Guardsmen and increased firepower, a new, peaceful solution was needed. No one, especially Poseidon Energy, wanted the National Guard to fire a single shot. As a big company, they likely didn't want their public image to be bloodied. A peaceful resolution was needed. And a situation like this was perfect for one Boston company to test out some of their anti-riot technology. Hallucinogen Inc. was a Boston-based company specializing in non-intrusive anti-riot solutions. After having some unremarkable and unsuccessful in-house test results, the team that worked on their perpetually in-progress hallucinogen gas was just itching for a field test. The Poseidon Energy protest was the perfect opportunity. Poseidon Energy purchased and delivered a shipment of the Hallucinogen Inc. gas to the power plant. The plan was supposed to be a simple one. Use the National Guard to form a perimeter around the protesters, trapping them, then released the gas onto the protesters with the hope that they would turn on each other, ending the protest without a shot being fired. But this quick rundown is not what happened. No. What happened was much worse. Somehow, whether it be protesters removing the soldiers' gas masks or the gas mask filters not working properly, the hallucinogen gas affected both the soldiers and protesters alike. Still locked in her office, Renee could only watch the carnage that would occur in front of the plant. Frenzied into a blind rage from the gas, those exposed began to literally tear each other apart. Biting, scratching, ripping, eviscerating each other. In a final address to his wife, Jacob Hargraves writes, "The gas. They gassed us, Renee. It's doing something to everyone. I can feel it. It's like adrenaline is pumping into my body and won't stop. I just saw Cindy and Foster leap onto a soldier and tear his face in half. I'm sorry, Renee. I have to stop whatever it is this gas is doing to me. I hope you're safe in there. I love you." What apparently wasn't known at the time was that this gas was causing traumatic adrenal gland ruptures in any exposed subject. This would lead the subject to experience hallucinations, extreme aggression, erratic and abnormal behavior, and eventual heart failure. With the protesters and guardsmen now transformed into a frenzied horde, those who were seeking shelter in the lockdown plant could only watch. Well, that would be the case if one of the sections of the plant didn't lack a set of security doors. In the older expansion of the power plant, a set of security doors weren't installed properly. This oversight provided access for the crazed and bloodthirsty mob to continue the bloodbath inside of the power plant. Those who believed that they were safe in the secure plant were simply the next targets, and with all the exits locked due to the lockdown, those who remained within were now sitting ducks. The only way out, through the old expansion, was plugged with the crazed soldiers and protesters. Renee wrote in a final apology to her now deceased husband, "I'm locked in, Jacob. I can't get out. I saw everything that happened through the window. The gas, the protesters going crazy. You. I'm sorry, Jacob. I couldn't stop them. I love you. We'll be together soon." With Olson's plan to stop the protest having utterly failed, the director of security sought shelter in the plant's basement. There, he recorded a final confession.
To whoever hears this, I was just following orders. Check my terminal, it is all there. This whole fiasco, it goes all the way to the top. Poseidon, the military, the government, they were all in on it. The protests had to stop. They sent in the guard and the gas. The gas. Hallucinogen gas. It was supposed to make them turn on each other. That's what they said. Violent riot in Union Camp. Protest ends without a shot fired. Something went wrong. They rushed the lines. We couldn't see in the smoke, but they must have ripped their gas masks off. The soldiers turned. I thought we were safe. The plant was sealed. They couldn't get in. But we forgot about the old expansion. They never installed the security doors there. They made it into the tunnels. And the plant. They're everywhere. There's no way out. There's no way out. There's no way out.
Olson believed himself to be following orders. In his final moments, he sought to expose those truly responsible for how the day's events went from a protest to a bloodbath. All the evidence of his claims would be found on his terminal. It wasn't his fault. But Olson's terminal was seemingly reset remotely, removing all claimed evidence of a man just following orders. So this leaves us with two conclusions. One, an unsympathetic security director cared not for the lives of the employees in which he once promised to keep safe. Olson enacted the Class 3 lockdown himself to seize control of the plant. He then requested the National Guard and anti-riot measures, and as the plant was now dealing with a very sensitive and volatile fuel, Poseidon and the federal government granted him these resources. He acted without advisement and ordered the use of the prototype gas entirely on his own, leaving him with the sole blame. Or, 2, Olson was truly following orders given to him by Poseidon Energy, and when things turned out quite bad, the higher-ups ensured that it would be Olson who would be the scapegoat for the tragic events of the Poseidon Energy protests. And when Olson tried to expose the government and Poseidon through his holotape and terminal, his terminal would be wiped remotely by the same groups he tried to expose. I'll leave it up to your own interpretation, but the second one does seem very Fallout, right? An abusive government caring not for its own people, but more focused on the welfare of big corporations. Quite Fallout indeed. And that is the tale of the Poseidon Energy protest, what I believe to be one of the most tragic and bloody events in pre-war Fallout lore. What began as a peaceful protest by a bunch of scared employees, who just wanted to ensure their own job security during a power plant retrofit, it resulted in the deaths of countless innocent people and led to a potential cover-up. Thank you for listening. If you liked the video, be sure to share and subscribe. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.
This is a Level 2 nuclear alert. Repeat, this is a Level 2 nuclear alert. Poseidon Energy Plant WV-06 has suffered a critical failure. Hazmat teams are en route. Please remain indoors and await further instructions.